Wha- Okay, I'll go ahead and start. So, many greetings all, and welcome to my second presentation of the Draconic Summit Winter Solstice. I hope you all have been enjoying this weekend so far. It's been pretty eventful and pretty exciting. I'm really happy. So, the purpose of this panel is to essentially just present a few questions and talk about the answers. The questions are again pinned in the panel discussion 9. Yeah, panel discussion 9. Lost my place. Essentially, the main question of this panel is, does your Draconity alter your worldview, beliefs, and/or philosophies? This is a topic that is really close to my heart since my Draconity, my non-humanity, my Lyco-Draconity has influenced the entirety of my philosophical beliefs, the entirety of my Earth and worldview, and it's why I decided to do this panel. It's just a very deep topic to my being, and I haven't done a panel like this before where I've really gone into my worldview and really, I don't know, I guess presented these questions and encouraged others to, reflect on them. Hopefully they'll allow for some self-discovery or just lead to some interesting conversation, one of the two. So essentially I view human life entirely through a draconic lens or a non-human lens in the sense of my Jaguar life, even though I know that I am unconsciously influenced by human biases all the time, like really everyone who lives a life upon this earth, I suppose. I said this before, though, a fair warning though, we will be discussing questions and topics that may bring on things like existentialism or identity crises, so if that's not something you feel may bother you over the course of this panel, please feel free to step out. There's no shame in doing that. It's just important. It's important to take care of yourself first, And I don't want this panel to cause any discomfort or distress, so something to think about. Anyway, though, let's get started with the panel. So I know I already linked to the questions in chat, though I'll go ahead and read them audibly. I'll just have Alkanath scroll up here. The first question, has your Draconity affected your worldview, aka your view and your opinions on life itself and the world, in this human life? And if it has, what are your beliefs and how has it shifted your worldview? The second question is, does your Draconity influence your worldview entirely, or does it only have a small effect on it? Third question, what do you believe your purpose in this world is, and does your Draconity influence that purpose? Fourth question, do you hold any spiritual beliefs, and if so, does your Draconity influence all, some, or none of your spiritual beliefs? Additionally, do you interact with spirituality in the context of Draconity? Oh, there's a typo there on my part, sorry, Alkanath. How do you view the workings of the human consciousness and human behavior, and does your Draconity influence such? Do you reflect on the state of the world, human society, and the workings of creation, the universe itself, through a human lens or a Draconic lens? All these questions can additionally be applied to other alter-human identities. So to start off with some of my own worldviews, for my being, like I said before, my Draconity and my Lyco-Draconity influences everything that I am, including my viewpoint of the world and my view of myself. I view my existence as a human, I view human culture, and the workings of the universe itself through an entirely Draconic lens, as Lunath herself would view it, albeit to a limited extent because I'm not connected to her consciousness, I'm just a fragment of her consciousness. I see myself as Draconic, even in this life, and see myself as a Lyco-Draconic werewolf despite my human body and appearance. I see myself as a Lyco-Draconic wolf who lives a human existence in this life. I feel that when people speak to my being, they are not speaking to a human in spite of my appearance. They are speaking to a Lyco-Draconic werewolf. Due to these viewpoints, I call the human body's family my Earth family. And I have to say this kind of quietly, though. I don't consider them my relatives, don't consider myself related to them, despite this human body, and despite this human body being related to them by blood. It's just, I am non-human after all. Why and view myself as non-human, I don't see why I would view myself as related to other people in spite of the whole science behind that. Just kind of a weird quirk of my psychology, I suppose. See, lost my place. I am incredibly self-aware of my human biases and my human needs, even when I know they conflict with my draconity. I know when something I desire, like my wishes to engage with and connect with human culture, having the pull for social interaction, and even the wish for a physical relationship are all influenced by my humanity and my human biases, since Lunat doesn't feel that any of those are really important. She doesn't feel the need to engage with culture when she can just watch it. She doesn't really feel the need to go out of her way to interact with others when she can just watch from afar. She doesn't want my being, her fragment, to have a physical relationship, though the human mind says otherwise. I am well aware that despite looking at this world through a draconic I did a typo in my script. I am well aware that despite looking at this world through a draconic lens, I still have a physically human mind and a human consciousness that exists alongside my non-human consciousness. It's inevitable that this physically human mind is going to work like a human mind most of the times, even when I solely want to look at this world through a draconic lens and not be influenced by my humanity, though that's just too much of my being to ask. It's inevitable that this physically human mind is often going to work like a human mind most of the times, even when I try to resist it, especially when I'm not feeling unhuman or when I'm not drawing upon my non-human consciousness. When I do feel non-human though, aka when I do get into a phantom shift, lost my place, and when I draw upon my non-human consciousness more, the human biases seem to fade more, though I'm not really in a place where I can do that right now, or a place where I really feel safe to express my non-human traits. It's some kind of pride on Lunath's end, or like, you can never be judged. You can never express yourself to people who will never fully get it. You have to be by yourself in order to do it. That's just Lunath's thing, though. And Lunath is also just so weary of my Earth family in general that it's just not feasible for my being right now. Unfortunately, though, I'll eventually move out. We'll get there. Let's see what I like. So even the way I interact with my indigenous human culture is viewed entirely through a non-human lens. I even recognize that my attachment to indigenous human culture and my wish to engage with human culture is really out of a wish to gather knowledge and to keep knowledge from fading away. Though also because I know that it's just something, how do I describe it? It's something primal in my human mind. I feel like it's a natural thing for humans to want to connect with culture, to feel that you belong to a culture, to participate in a group with those cultures, and I feel that affects my being. It's even though Lunath doesn't feel the need to engage with the culture, she's just perfectly content with watching human culture and just being at that. Though upon this earth, I feel the need to engage with human cultures. I want to dance alongside a community. I want to do ceremony alongside a community. I don't want to just watch. I want to make lasting connections to fully engage with that culture. And yeah, I can probably get more into that another time. Though that's the basis for that. Let's see. Now, obviously, this definitely isn't to say that I feel nothing during Indigenous ceremonies, and it's definitely not to say that I practice my traditions purely for knowledge gaining reasons. That's the exact opposite. I want to make lasting connections. I want to honor my human indigenous culture, and I know the best way to do that is by engaging with the culture and helping out the community, even if that conflicts with Lunath's view. I do believe that there are spiritual things that happen in ceremonies, though because I often view ceremony through a draconic lens and not through the lens of, let's say, a more traditional indigenous person. I don't consider myself entirely traditional because, what kind of traditional indigenous human views themselves as non-human and views their culture and interacts with their culture not as an indigenous human, though as a draconic being. I mean, that's just not normal. And because Lunat has this very scientific view, though, of things, which is super fucking ironic, I don't think that spiritual experiences happen as often in ceremonies that I participate in, like pretty much all of the indigenous folks in my community. I feel that many spiritual things that happen to my being during ceremonies are purely a result of human psychological phenomena and not a result of anything spiritual happening. I believe there have been genuine spiritual experiences that have happened to my being in those ceremonies, though for the most part, I recognize how do I describe this? Like the euphoric feeling I get when I dance, the adrenaline rush I get when I dance, I don't think is spiritual. I think it's a result of my human consciousness and interacting with human culture, pleasing that human instinct, I suppose. That sounds kind of weird, though. Whatever. Anyways, alongside my indigenous human views, my Draconity influences the entirety of my spiritual views. Even my interactions with Lord Tezcatlipoca, the Mesoamerican sacred figure slash divinity slash god, however you would view beings like him, of the smoking mirror. As an indigenous person upon this earth, I honor Tezcatlipoca since he actually approached my being a few months after I started engaging in indigenous Mesoamerican ceremonies. In these ceremonies, I actually didn't really want to interact with him because I thought that his reaching out to my being was more of a psychological phenomena, like, oh, this is just something in your head. He's not really contacting you. Though when the feeling persisted a lot more than I thought it did, and when it became more powerful, the more I engaged in ceremony and the more I read up about him, I just came to accept that, yes, Tezcatlipoca was contacting my being, and he is in fact interested in my being. He also helped my being discover that I was actually a jaguar in a past life, and in said life, I actually met Tezcatlipoca a few times. I know for a fact that Lord Tezcatlipoca approached my being because I am non-human, because he's interested in my energy, because he's interested in my worldview, because he sensed that I was different in that way. I obviously don't want to label myself as this ultra unique special indigenous dancer who's so much more unique than everyone else, though I do know for a fact that I'm the only lycodraconic dancer in the entirety of the indigenous community. I mean, I'm the only one in the ultra-human community who's lycodraconic, at least to my knowledge. I highly, highly doubt that there are any other indigenous dancers who are dragonkin or draconic, unfortunately. Indigenous peoples in the ultra-human community are just so few and far between that I doubt that there's any indigenous dancers out there that are draconic. Though I know that Tezcatlipoca is interested in those aspects of my being, and he wants my being to honor him through a non-human lens, and not just through a human lens. Tezcatlipoca is honored by many humans, though not by someone who identifies as draconic, who is draconic. So when I interact with Tezcatlipoca, I'm very conscious of interacting with him in that way, since I know that's what drew him to my being in the first place. Let's see where I am in my script. I also interact with indigenous dances and indigenous ceremony in a non-human way. When I dance in a ceremony, I do not dance as a human. I dance as a wolf or a jaguar. I invoke the energy of my wolf soul and my jaguar soul. In more non-human terms, I invoke a phantom shift during my dances and my indigenous dances, and my indigenous dances do help my being feel more powerful phantom shifts. And when I do have those powerful phantom shifts, and when I do really feel them, it's really nice. It feels, it's just hard to put it into words. It's just really nice. I always add a non-human twist, per se, with my movements in danza, or dance, indigenous dances, and I just dance in a more animalistic way. I know others have noticed, and I know other indigenous dancers are like, what the fuck is she dancing like? And I just don't care. This is just who I am, and I don't want to interact with human culture in a non-human way. Anyways, I feel that whenever I interact with human culture, any human culture, I need to interact with it through a non-human lens. It feels like I'm denying everything I am when I just interact with human culture as a human. When I say, "Oh, well, I'm engaging with this human culture, I need to engage with it as a human." No, I don't feel right doing that. And I don't think this aspect of myself will ever change, honestly. I think I'm always going to interact with human culture, not as a human, though as a draconic being, as a being connected to another draconic being who is extremely interested in the gathering of knowledge and the mortal experience. In the context of my spirituality, I worship three non-perceivable draconian creator divinities that Lunat reveres and honors upon her home realms. It may seem strange for my being to worship beings that I cannot even perceive, though I know they exist, I know they have endless power, and I know they created Lunat, and that's enough for my being to honor them. And though I engage with indigenous human culture, I am still primarily a draconian pagan and will always primarily be a draconian pagan. After all, when I awakened, that was the path I practiced first. So I'm a draconian pagan first and foremost, and an indigenous dancer second, despite that being a very non-traditional thing in the indigenous community. Let's see, where am I at in my script? So even in indigenous ceremonies, when I honor the creator, when I honor Mother Earth, and when I honor Father Sky, I honor the three draconian creator divinities that I call the Almighty Infinite One, the Almighty Volcanic One, and the Almighty Tempest One. I honor them in my everyday life as well, not just in indigenous ceremonies or in Draconic ceremonies, even though they are divine beings no one else knows of except for my being upon this earth. Though I could probably go more into that in my Draconic spirituality panel tomorrow. I even understand that my desire for a relationship, a physical relationship upon this earth, is actually the complete opposite of what Lunat would want. She is perfectly content with our partners, Altanak, Volatile, Alkanat, and Kitukan, just keeping their distance from this fragment and just speaking to this fragment through intention and through words and never actually physically touching my being or the fragment, whatever. She's just content with it, and I'm not. I want something closer. Where am I at in my script anyway? Lunat is perfectly content with the love that I currently receive from my guardians slash partners, from the spirit realms, through their intention, through their words, and the love and the deep, very wonderful love that they express through my being. Though I know that my human mind and my human body desires physical closeness that directly conflicts with those wants of my draconity. To balance it out, though, I apply each and every one of my draconic preferences and my desires for my relationship preferences upon this earth. Lunat is a very picky, very choosy being, and she will not choose anyone that does not, or she will not even give them a second look if they don't fit to her exact standards, and that's how I am upon this earth. Part of that is due to trauma reasons, though I recognize that Lunat is just very picky, and that's why I'm not in a relationship upon this earth, but that's fine. Even if I don't ever end up in a physical relationship upon this earth, it's not going to make my being lose any sleep. Especially because I know that desire is based on my humanity. It would be nice to have a physical partner. It'd be nice to have that closeness, though if it doesn't happen, it's fine. It's all good. I balance out everything really. And I'll always be picky about any potential partners because I know the horror stories. We'll just see what happens, I suppose. That seems to be everything on my script, though. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the stage for others to talk about their answers to the questions that I posted, or for them to just ask my being a question. So again, the stage is open. If you want to come up and speak on stage, feel free to do so, and I will go ahead and look at the panel chat while I'm waiting. If there's any long dead space, we can probably edit it out of the panel recording. Hello.
Hello. Hi.
Hello.
So, kind of felt a little impulsive. I was like, oh, I should volunteer to get on stage. And then I was like, what were the questions again? I'm just looking them up real quick just to remind myself what we're talking about.
Yeah,
Because there
understandable.
was quite a few questions we decided to go through. So, are we doing this in a kind of going through all the questions, or
No, it's more of just answer whatever questions you feel apply to you.
okay? Then I think I'll just start from the top and just speak my mind then.
Understandable.
Um, So to start with the first of the questions, um, asking has my Draconity affected my worldview in this human life, and if it has, what are my beliefs? Um, I would say that given the nature of my Draconity, it absolutely has had to have changed my view in some way or fashion. At first, I think it might have been instinctual influence, but after after some time reintegrating, I started to feel, hmm, how do I put this? Not as emotionally attached to things as I used to be. And for some reason, I find comfort in that. I'm not disturbed. Um, as far as actual beliefs and whatnot, I think it's hard to tell because I've also had a lot of experiences in life that have also affected my worldviews. I remember when I was younger and earlier in the process, I was a very naive individual, and nowadays I'm willing to accept that some people are just don't like me. Um, from a draconic point, there actually is some things. For example, um, there are things that I observe people doing that I think is very silly, like judging people simply based on appearances when especially in situations where appearances give you very little information. Um, and what else? Let's see. I'll just move on to the second question because
That's
that'll
good.
probably help me move along. So, does it influence the world view by viewing opinions on life itself entirely, or only have a small effect? Um, I think in the sense that things have shifted from me experiencing things from my personal view to kind of feeling like an observer at times. I would say that it is a very subtle but very incredibly impactful change in perception because if you think about it, um, even just the statement of I'm looking at this human issue from the perspective of a human that impacts me and my fellow humans too. I'm looking at this human issue from the perspective of a dragon, and kind of kind of makes you think about the human race as a whole and why they're even having these issues. It it really adds like a more of a chance to back away and have a bigger picture, I think. Um, my purpose in this world. Moving on to question three. Um, I I don't think I've really thought about that as much, but if I had to think of a reason, I think It is a desire to have more experiences beyond what one mortal life could have. That's kind of coming from Aurora's standpoint, but also a little bit for me, because if I was a piece that had grown into their own life and then recombined with all the past experiences that I've had to make one whole soul, if this isn't the first time I've done this, then that means this is something that I like to do. And that would probably be my reason for being in this world, because I want to experience it. Spiritual beliefs, I kind of touched on that a little bit. Um, my human self was raised in a Christian setting, and while I do believe some of the stuff, I also believe that thanks to my Draconity, it was simply not the entire story, and I am learning more from my experiences as a dragonkin than I ever would have if I had just simply remained in church. Um, it took a long time for me to be comfortable with the idea of reincarnation instead of just being dragon soul shaped. But the thing is for some reason I still don't have clear memories of a past life. Hopefully, if those memories are there, they'll reveal themselves to me within the next decade, I hope. Um, Interacting with my spirituality in the context of a Draconity, I would say absolutely. I almost recreationally, I would no, literally recreationally, I like to induce shifts um and on the human side, I'm absolutely infatuated with Aurora. I think it is an incredible experience to me personally, and I just love diving into that whenever I have the opportunity to, because it's a whole it's just a whole experience. It's something that I like to revel in.
Yeah,
The
understandable.
the let's see, how do I view the workings of human consciousness and human behavior, and does my Draconic influence such? Ooh, this is a fun one. Um, so the workings of the human consciousness and human behavior. Um, I have spent most of my life observing human behavior and examining my own consciousness, because as a human, the human part of me, all they really wanted was to make friends. At first, they wanted to live in harmony with with other people and even animals around him, because he just really valued life. And how this started mingling with the Draconity influence is when Aurora entered the body and we started integrating. Not only was I having, we have had human thoughts, but they were also being paired with draconic thoughts. And experiencing these new emotions and instincts was a new way to interface with the world. Um, when I shift, it's like a slider now between human and dragon behavior. I I do find it fascinating. Um, I might have to go and explore that topic more at some other point in time, because I feel like I go on and on about it and keep thinking about it and realize things. Next, do I reflect on the state of the world, human society, and the workings of creation through a human lens or draconic lens? I think I kind of low-key answered that question earlier, but I'll just say it again to reiterate. It's a little bit of both. Me having a duality with Aurora allows us to look at things from both angles. And sometimes it's not that we disagree, but sometimes one side makes more sense than the other. I think the biggest advantage we have is being able to look at things more objectively, because we basically have 2 points of view for every point that we look at.
Yeah, that's understandable.
I think that covers just about everything. So I think I can give the floor to someone else who'd like to speak.
Yeah, that's understandable. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, absolutely.
On the purpose thing before I forget, I know my purpose in this life, and I touched on this before, though it's basically just to live this human life, to gather knowledge, to gather experiences for the sake or for the interest of Lunat. That's literally my purpose upon this earth. It's not anything grand, it's not anything unknown, it's just I live this human life in Lunat's interest. I'm her little experiment, and that's really it. Anyways, who else wants to go?
Um, I could proceed unless if Amber wants to go first.
No, it's all right.
All right then. My one is, well, being a psychological identifier, unfortunately, a good 4 out of 6 of these questions I have no answers for. However, I can probably kill 2 birds with 1 stone here. Actually, I wouldn't say kill 2 quails. Altanuk would kill me. Has your Draconity affected your worldview, and does your Draconity influence your worldview? To both of these, profoundly so. In every context possible, me coming to terms with my Draconity and the people I have met by proxy have fundamentally changed who I am as a person and how I view the world around me, primarily through having a far more open mind than I ever did. And yes, one may argue that naturally comes with age, but I can assure you the environment that I was in would not have permitted the degree to which I am a different person these days. The company I keep, both in a Draconic and a non-Draconic context, are fundamentally different to anything I could have envisioned in the past, which I know doesn't quite tie into Draconity itself, but it is something that I squarely attribute to Draconity and nothing else, really.
That's understandable.
That's all I wanted to say.
Understandable. Thank you for sharing.
Mm-hmm.
That was fast. Let me try and go for it, because I actually would like to leave to the kitchen, so I'm trying to make it short. Yeah, it's difficult because actually I could go on for maybe an hour about all these questions. I've written down a few things, so let's throw stuff at you. Has your Draconity affected your worldview on this human life, and what are your beliefs? Well, it didn't so much affect my worldview than actually define it, or maybe redefine it, yeah. So I actually had those ideas I'm convinced of now all my life, but they got a boost when I had this spiritual awakening 5 years ago. And well, it's hard to tell in a nutshell what my beliefs are, but they hover strongly towards the Buddhistic concepts. So to me, consciousness is fundamental, matter is only a representation of consciousness, and that includes this body and this whole reality. To me, subjective reality does not exist. There is no reality out there to me, at least not any reality that is defined separate from me. Reality doesn't exist without a conscious observer. Yeah, so I think that is a general rule. Well, maybe, yeah. So I don't like to generalize. Actually, it's yeah. I'll take it back. Maybe it's just for me. But anyhow, that's how it is. So space, time, and matter, to me, they are merely tools to make conscious experiences. So what is known as consensual reality emerges from a kind of overlap of mental constructs that I coined the term mindscapes for. And those are the mindscapes of all the conscious beings in this universe. Yeah? So every observer is constantly, every second, creating what we know as consensual reality. And it doesn't make a difference if it's me or you or your neighbor's cat. We are all eternal creators. There are other universes. There is an afterlife and reincarnation exists. Time is only relevant within a universe, but otherwise it's totally meaningless. And finally, everything is connected. All is one. That is the classic Buddhistic idea. And actually, yeah, even if it sounds egoistic, everything is also me. And you, of course, and your neighbor's cat. So that is the idea of non-duality and all connectedness. Yeah, I'm not too sure about that point actually. It might only seem like that if you are part of a consensual reality, and that might look different when you just leave that reality. Yeah. So does your Draconity influence that worldview? Yeah. Well, I said it more or less defines it. Most of what I told just now is coming from that spiritual awakening I was talking about. And it took me a while to realize that I'm not the only one who had this realization, pretty much exactly this realization. It happened since ancient times. It happens to many people. And I've actually talked to a few. They are actually completely understanding of it, while for others it's just a totally exotic and hardly understandable concept. And that was the case for me too when I got the spiritual awakening. It cost me a few days and hours of work to wrap my mind around it, and also in the years afterwards to just integrate this. But now this is the world I live in. And actually, it felt like this was some kind of knowledge that was like channeled to me from an entity that is a part of me but resides beyond this reality. And I immediately assigned the term Draconic to this entity. Yeah. What do you believe your purpose in this world is, and does your Draconity influence that purpose? And that's where my notes actually end. Yes, Draconity actually, again, it defines my purpose. My first purpose coming here, and I'm convinced about that because it led me through this life. It just never failed me. So I'm convinced that my first purpose is to learn, especially about technology, and also about humans and what drives them, and especially if technology would be a threat to natural life on this planet, because I believe that I'm a guardian of life, but not a specific species, but life as an abstract concept. I will talk about this a bit more in tomorrow's panel. Yeah. So I also consider time as just a mere tool. So I don't have any problem with like waiting for a couple million years or a couple 100 million years, and name whatever, it's just meaningless. In order for the planet to heal from the catastrophic environmental influence that humans have. I don't actually. I won't go more into that topic because that might spark controversy. I would love to, but it's not the time for that, I think. So that was my first purpose. But I believe that with the spiritual awakening, it is completed, and it would seem that I have accepted a second purpose, which is to help actually people, especially ultra humans, to break free of human limitations and to live themselves more in this world. That is something that I feel called to do, and I'm struggling with solving that riddle, how to do it. Yeah, but I think that will define the second part of my life. Spiritual beliefs, and if so, does your Draconity influence all or some or none of your spiritual beliefs? Yeah, I've answered that already, all of them. Do you interact with spirituality in the context of Draconity? And not in the sense as it is described by pagan Draconic practitioners. So I don't do all that stuff like praying to dragons or calling for dragon guides or something like that. It's just I'm more basic. I don't do any rituals or something. So that's not the case. How do you view the workings of the human consciousness and human behavior, and does your Draconity influence such? Human behavior, that is something I just learned while being here. It is something imprinted into me. I learned it just in order to fit in this community, and it took me a while. But I think it turned out quite well. Human consciousness, well, that is actually something I'm struggling to understand. It's definitely the case that I am moving inside a human field of consciousness, so to say. So I have access to human consciousness, but it is not mine. That is something foreign. Yeah, and so I don't think that I have it. That's that in a nutshell. Do you reflect on the state of the world, human society, and the workings of creation through a human lens or Draconic lens? Always Draconic. And that sometimes leads to strange results, actually strange from the view of humans. For example, what I told you just a minute ago, I have no problem waiting 100 million years for things to heal. Other humans don't understand that because, they think about themselves and their children, and they have struggle thinking even in terms of 1,000 years. So if I don't explain that I'm actually non-human, it will lead to some confusion, and some people think that I'm just weird. Yeah. So usually, if I can, I will explain that it's a non-human view, and sometimes I will just say that I'm actually an alien. I just pretend to be a human. That sometimes that's enough. Yeah, that would be my take.
Yeah, that's understandable. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Yee. Does anyone else want to come up on stage and speak? It seems not. So I think I'll actually go ahead and end this panel early. Our next panel will be, let's see, Dracomanca's panel on Draconic languages, or more specifically, their Draconic language. And that'll be in an hour. Regardless, though, thank you all for listening in. It's much appreciated. And again, I hope you all are having a wonderful time at the summit, and hopefully the questions I presented were able to, well, invoke some self-discovery and thoughts that were beneficial to you. Anyways, we can move to the Draconic voice chat to discuss more of these experiences and questions, discussions, whatnot. Thank you all for listening in.